All right, let's jump right in. We're about to take a deep dive into one of the most, well, practical chapters in the entire New Testament, 1 Peter 3. But we're not just going to read it. Oh no, the goal here is to turn these ancient words into a visual story that really sticks with you, something you won't forget. Ready?
So here's the big question, right? How can words written thousands of years ago actually create, well, a movie in your mind? That's exactly what we're going to explore. We're going to walk through this verse by verse and build these really powerful images together. It's going to be cool. Let's start.
Okay, so our journey begins at home with a blueprint for how things work. Verse 1 kicks things off with instructions for wives. Now, this isn't about being a doormat, not at all. It's about a kind of silent power. The kind of power that comes from your actions, not your arguments. So for the visual, just imagine this. A wife's respectful conduct is like dropping a small pebble into a still pond. And those gentle ripples, they spread out and reach your husband, speaking volumes without a single word being said. It's that quiet influence that can actually win him over.
All right, verse 2 adds another layer. It talks about chaste conduct accompanied by fear. Now, that word fear can throw people off, right? But it's not about being scared. Think of it as a deep, reverent respect. So the picture here is of the husband. Maybe he's got this hardened, stressed-out expression. But as he watches his wife's character, you see his face just soften. It's like he's watching a calm, clear river, and it brings this sense of peace over him. Now, in verse 3, Peter pivots. He's about to make this really sharp contrast between two kinds of beauty. To really get this, picture a woman looking into a mirror. And in that reflection, you see all the flashy stuff, the gold jewelry, the perfect hair, the fancy clothes. But then, she turns away from it all.
And why does she turn away? Well, verse 4 tells us. She's turning toward a different kind of beauty, one that's inside. So the visual shifts. Imagine a treasure chest creaking open. But inside, there's no gold or diamonds. Instead, there's a single, unbreakable gem, and it's just glowing with this warm, peaceful light. That right there, that's the gentle and quiet spirit. That's what's truly precious.
And you know, Peter wants to make it clear this isn't some brand new, radical idea. Verse 5 points back to the past. So picture this. You're walking through a grand hall, like an art gallery. And on the walls are all these portraits of incredible, holy women from history. They all look different, but they have one thing in common. See that faint glow coming from within each of them? They're all adorned with that same inner light.
Then, in verse 6, he gives a really specific shout-out to Sarah. Now, when you hear this, please don't picture her cowering in a corner. That's not it at all. Instead, see her standing shoulder to shoulder with Abraham. They're partners, a team on this epic adventure together. It's a relationship built on mutual respect, and her respect for him is actually a source of her own strength, not weakness.
Okay, so now in verse 7, the camera pans over to the husbands, and here's another phrase that can trip us up. Weaker vessel. This does not mean inferior, not even close. Think of it more like delicate or precious. The image that comes to mind is a man carefully, gently, holding a beautiful, intricate glass vase. He's not trying to crush it, he's protecting it, admiring it, recognizing just how valuable it is. That's the kind of honor we're talking about.
All right, we're shifting gears now into what we could call the blessing mindset. Peter zooms out from the family unit to the wider community, the church family. Verse 8 calls for unity, compassion, and love. A great way to picture this is to see a really diverse group of people all working together on a massive, complicated jigsaw puzzle. Every single piece is unique, right? But with everyone working together, with compassion, they all fit together perfectly to create one beautiful picture.
Verse 9 gives us this incredibly powerful choice. So let's use a split screen for this one. On the left side, you see two people just stuck in this miserable loop, slinging mud at each other, back and forth, it's ugly. But on the right side, you see someone get mud slung at them, but instead of throwing it back, they hold out a clean towel. They choose to give a blessing instead of an insult, and just like that, they break the whole cycle.
So how do we do that? Well, verses 10 through 12 are like a little roadmap, a quote from the Old Testament showing the way. Verse 10 kicks it off by saying, "The path to a good life starts with your words." Simple, but so hard, right? The image here is a person standing at a fork in the road. One path is labeled Good Days, and it's sunny and beautiful. To get on that path, the person takes a symbolic lock and clicks it shut over their lips. Guard your words. Verse 11 shows this isn't a passive thing. It's all about action. So now picture that same person. They don't just glance away from the other path, the dark, thorny one. No, they physically turn their back on it.
And then they don't just walk, they sprint down that glowing path labeled peace. See, peace isn't something you just stumble upon. It's something you have to chase after.
And verse 12 gives us the why. It shows the consequences of our choice. So as you see that person running toward peace, look up. Above them, picture a giant, caring eye watching over them and an ear that's open to them. But then look over at that dark, evil path. A massive, dark storm cloud is gathering right over it. It's a stark visual of God's favor versus his opposition.
Okay, so this all sounds great, but let's be real. Life isn't always sunny paths. What happens when things get tough? We enter this next section about suffering with a purpose. Verse 13 asks this rhetorical question, and the image for it is amazing. Picture someone walking that good path, but now they're surrounded by this brilliant protective aura of goodness. Shadowy arrows come flying at them, but they just poof, dissolve or bounce right off that shield.
But what if one of those arrows gets through? What if you do suffer for doing the right thing? Well, verse 14 has a surprising answer. You are blessed. So imagine this. A dart labeled unjust criticism hits the person, but instead of leaving a bleeding wound, a medal of honor instantly appears right where it struck. The suffering itself becomes a badge of honor.
So how do you respond in those moments? Verse 15 gives us a clear three-step game plan. First, in your heart, set Christ apart as Lord. Picture your heart literally as a throne room, and Christ is sitting on the throne. He's the king. Second, always be ready to give an answer for the hope you have. And third, and this is key, do it with gentleness and respect. You're not yelling at people. You're just calmly inviting them to see who's on the throne in your heart.
Verse 16 shows us the power of a clear conscience. This is a great visual. Imagine someone in a brilliant, pristine white coat, and an accuser comes up and just hurls a big handful of mud at them. But the coat is made of good conscience, so the mud just slides right off, leaving it perfectly clean. And who's left looking foolish? The accuser, standing there with muddy hands.
Verse 17 brings us back to that fork in the road, but with a new perspective. It really boils it down to the simple, profound choice. One path is labeled suffering for doing good, and yeah, it looks rocky and hard, but in the distance you can see a beautiful sunrise. The other path, suffering for doing evil, might look a little easier at the start, but it quickly descends into total darkness. The choice is clear.
But why is it better to suffer for doing good? What's the ultimate point? Verse 18 is the climax of the argument. This is the ultimate rescue mission. It's all about Jesus. For this visual, just see this enormous, impossibly wide chasm. On one side is humanity, and on the other side is God. And there's no way to cross. And then, Christ, through his sacrifice, becomes a living bridge spanning that chasm, making a way for us to get to God.
Okay, verse 19 is one of the most mysterious and debated verses in the whole Bible, but let's just focus on the raw image it presents. After his death, but before his resurrection, picture Christ's spirit, glowing like a torch, descending into this dark, shadowy prison. He's not there to let people out. He's there to proclaim his victory over sin and death, right in the heart of darkness. And then, verse 20 connects this grand cosmic event all the way back to the story of Noah. Picture Noah's Ark, tossing on this chaotic, raging sea. For the rest of the world, that water is judgment. But for the 8 people safe inside the ark, that very same water is what's lifting them up, carrying them to safety. They are literally saved through the water of judgment. And that powerful image of water leads us right into verse 21 in baptism. Peter makes it super clear. This isn't about taking a bath, washing dirt off your skin. The real picture is what's happening on the inside. So as you see someone coming up out of the water, imagine their spirit, their inner self, reaching out and shaking hands with God. It's a pledge, an appeal for a clear conscience. And that brings us to the grand finale in verse 22. This is the ultimate victory scene. The camera pans up into the heavens, and you see Christ ascending to take his seat on a glorious throne, right at the right hand of God the Father. And all around him, every angel, every authority, every cosmic power, they are all bending the knee. He is in complete command. So there you have it. We've journeyed from the home out into the community. We've walked through suffering, and we've ended up at a heavenly throne. It's a complete story, and it leaves us with just one final massive question to think about. If that, Christ's triumphant victory, is the ultimate destination, well, how does that change the direction of your journey right here, right now?